Hey, hi all, welcome back to the channel again. Today we are going to discuss about the form states and the validation part. So in the last two video we have learned how we can create a template driven form and a reactive form example as well. But then it's time to add some validations to them. Like whatever controls we have in the forms, we need to put some validation on those in order to take the right data from the user and the proper format in which we want. So for that, if you wanted to give a validations, you need to know whatever states that particular form or a control provides, right? So if you do not know the states, then on what basis you will add the validations on controls? So that's the reason we will understand the form states and the control states first, and then after that we will try to implement the validations in template driven form as well as a reactive form as well. So let's see how we are actually reading the states of a form and a control. So to read states for the form, you need to use the template variable which is available on the form element, and um, we know that, like, we have learned that why we added this ng form directive as a value to the form template variable. It's because we will have the instance of this particular form inside this template variable. Okay, and in the same way we have added the template variables for the controls, and we have assigned the ng model directive to that template variable name, so that this particular template variable can hold each and every property of this particular input field as well as the model which is binded to this input field, and the states. Okay, so whatever states this particular input field has, right? We have added the template variable for name, we have added the template variable for the email input field as well, and then we have added the required attribute over here as a part of validation, and over here required as well as email. We have added both, like more than one validation to this email type of input. Now let's understand. If you look at over here in the form status div, we are using user form template variable to read the status or states of the form. Okay, so as you can see, the status is one of the state of the form, the submitted is also one of the state of the form, and then the below states are common between form and a particular control. Those are nothing but valid, invalid, pristine, dirty, touched, and pending, right? So let's look at the one by one. Let me save everything. By the way, if you want to give the custom validator to any input field, whenever you have created a form using template driven, right? So in that case you need to add those validations in the on submit method itself. Okay, or you need to use the asynchronous validators. So we will look into those part in the upcoming videos, but for now, as you have learned, template driven form is strictly a template based only, and to manipulate this form we are using the template variables only, and that's the reason we are using the native validators of those particular control itself, and we don't have any ways to add the validators dynamically as compared to reactive form, right? So that's the reason we are not able to add the custom validators as well dynamically. to add the custom validators, you need to use the async validators. So that part we will look into the next video. But for now, let's understand the states of the form and the states of the control. So as you can see, the valid for control and the valid for form both are false now, and the form status is also invalid because we have added some kind of validations, and those validations did not meet yet. So that's the reason, the status of the form is invalid. So if we add the data which is actually following the rules whatever we have set, then this status will become valid. So let's say if I have added the proper data according to validations we have added, so you can see the form will become valid. Okay, and if I submit, the form submitted state will become true. Now let's look at the valid and invalid. As you have seen, right? So initially the form status is invalid, and then the form value and the form field value, the valid value, both were false, and the invalid values were true. As soon as I corrected the validations, the valid value has become true and invalid value has become false, right? So these two are interdependent. So whenever form is invalid, the valid will become false and the invalid will become true, and whenever the form is invalid, um, right, then invalid will become true and valid will become false. Similarly, the pristine and dirty, these two fields are also related to each other, like depends on each other. The state pristine is defined, or we can say whenever form is loaded for the first time with its default values, like whatever default value are, whether these are empty value, this can be empty value or this can be pre-populated values, it doesn't matter. But unless and until you change anything, this pristine will not become false. Okay, so initially this pristine is true because we did not change anything, and initially the dirty is false because we did not change anything. Okay, so if we change anything, the pristine will become false and the dirty will become true, right? If you revert back to the original values, then also pristine will become false only and dirty will become true, because we have made this control as a dirty, in the sense we have selected it, we have typed in something, right, and then we have blurred it. So once you do this, the dirty will become true and pristine will become false. Pristine is nothing but the initial stage only, right, the initial stage, right, and then after that you add something or you revert back to the original, it doesn't matter, the pristine will always be false, and after that the dirty will always be true. Now let's understand the touched. So let's say I have refreshed this form. So right now touched is false. Whenever I make this field active and then I make it blurred, you can see the touched is true for the form and for the control as well. Okay, so what Angular thing is, you have touched this control but you did not made any changes, so that's the reason pristine is true and dirty is false, but touched is true, right, because I have touched this, made this control active and clicked outside. Then we have a form pending false, right? So pending is a state which actually works asynchronously, and this works whenever we assign some asynchronous operators, asynchronous validators. So the value of this pending will become true once we have applied the asynchronous validators. So that we will look into the next video. I will explain you this state in that video as well. Now, as we have learned through the states of the form and the control, let's add some validations based on these states. We will try to add a validation for the name input first, ng if, so I'm using structural directive, right? So name dot invalid and name dot touched. In this case, I need to add a validation message that name is required. Now similarly, we will add the same thing for the email as well. So let's add this to the email. Now we will use email template variable over here instead of name. Email is required, right? Now as you actually able to see over here, required is one validation. So we do have another validation for email as well. So now how to show this, right? So we need to add conditions for this p element. Okay, so show this if if the email dot errors object, okay, errors object has required as an error, and if errors object has email as an error. So email is not proper, let's say, right? So let me save everything. Now I'm touching this field and leaving it empty, making it blur. You can see name is required. Again, I am touching this input field, making it active, and then again making it blur without inputting anything. Email is required. Okay. So now if I try to put something over here, that message will fade away. Again, if I try adding something over here, you can see the required message has gone. Now the email is not proper. Let's say image, right? Email is not proper. That message came out, right? Let me add test over here and then test at the rate test, right? And again, if I click outside after giving dot, you can see email is not proper. Dot in. So this is the proper email. So now I am not able to see the validation message over there, right? So this is how you can read the states, and as you have learned, like in which case we need to use which state. So based on your requirement, you can make use of these states and you can apply the validations. So right now what I did is I just added state when it is invalid and when it is touched. Touched in the sense when we make it active and click outside, then only we are showing the message. As you can see, I'm making it, no, let me refresh again, right? So I'm making it active and clicking outside, then only this field is visible. So I'm using invalid and pristine, these two, sorry, invalid and touched, these two states. But then, as per your requirement, you can use dirty as well, right? You can use valid, strictly based on the requirements only. Okay. Now, as we have learned, setting the validations for the template driven form, let's understand how we can set the same thing in the reactive form as well. So now to read the form state, you need to use the form group, right? So this is the variable we are actually used to create a form group. Okay. So to read the form state, you need to use the form group variable. And then again, to get the state of that particular control, again you need to use the form group only, but then you need to use the get method. Okay. So let's try to add some validations, but for now let's see how the form looks. Let me display none to the template driven and let me show the form. So this is the reactive form we have, right? So right now if you look at the form, this is actually a valid form, right? Because here the class is ngValid is applied. Why it is happening? Because we did not added any kind of validations to this form. So let's try to add validations now. So for validation, you need to import the validators class from the Angular form. And using that validator class, you can use these functions. right? So now for the name we have required validator, but for email we have two validators. Then we can use the array over here. Okay, validators.required or validators.email. Again, for gender as well, we have added the validators.required, and for CNAME and CAddress, again we are adding the required validator only. Now if you save everything and now look at the form, you can see the form is now invalid. Okay, because this particular form has some validations attached to it. So that's the reason now the form has become invalid, and the submit button as well has disabled now. Now as we have added the validators from the TypeScript file, now let's add the same thing what we did over here. Let me copy this, for the email. Let me add this for the email. Now over here we are not using the template variables, right? So we will make use of this user form group property, and then we will call the get method on it, right? And to get method we need to pass the form control name. So this is the directive form control name, which has the value as the email. So we need to pass that value over here, right? So now what is the form control name and what is the the form group name? So these are actually directives. If you want to know more about this, you need to watch my previous video. There I have explained you everything. Okay, so now let me copy this thing and again used it over here, again used it over here and over here as well. Okay, same thing we are doing, only we are using the form group variable and the get method on it, okay, instead of using template variables. So let me add for the name as well. So let me copy this div over here and paste it over here, and I'll use the same thing on name, and instead of email I'll just paste name key. Okay, I'll save everything. Now as you can see, name is required, which came by default, right? So now I touched this and I'm actually making it blurred. You can see name is required, email is required. If I type something over here, email is not proper came, test.com. As you can see, everything has been covered now. These three validators has been covered. Now if I select and add this, you can see the form has been now, form is valid now, has become valid, and then the disabled button has now been enabled. Okay, because the form is valid now. So as you can see, ng valid class has been added to this. Ng touched, ng dirty, and ng valid, because we have performed these two things. So that's the reason the form became valid. So now we can submit the form, we can do everything, we can reset it again, we can submit it, we can do anything. The only difference while adding the validations to the reactive form as compared to the template driven form, in the template driven form we are making use of the template variables, but in the reactive form we are making use of the form group. And to make form group work in the validations, if you do not give any kind of validation over here, you will get some errors, right? So to make it work, like the form group dot get name dot invalid kind of thing or touched kind of thing, you need to add the validators while you define that particular control. Okay, so there are other validators as well. So validators dot, right? So we have max length, max value, min length. Then we have a null validator, we have a pattern, right? Then we have a compose, then we have compose async, right? Compose async, and pattern we are going to look into the next video. And as you have learned, email and required, right? You can use the same thing, like the same way you can use the max length, min and min length, validators as well. So max and min are applied to the number type variable, and max length and min length can be applied on the input type text as well. Okay, so you can do this as a exercise on your laptop, right? So you can practice this. So in the next video we will look into compose async and pattern validator, right? So this is how we can actually achieve validations in the template driven form and in the reactive form. So this is how it is, the form states, control states and validations. So I hope you have liked this video. If you like it, so hit like on the video, then share it with your friend. Do not forget to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss any new upcoming updates. Thanks all guys. Let's meet in next video.